one. It's pretty exciting and a little bit strange to think of how many folks are listening in without us being able to see your faces. But we're excited to share some information and hopefully have a bit of time for some questions and conversation at the end of the webinar. As Sheena said, it's being recorded, and that's part of our desire to share it out as broadly as possible with others who may be interested in this information. My name's Julie Price. I am one of the staff people for the Northern Manitoba Food, Culture and Community Collaborative, and I'm today in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I am in Treaty 1 territory, the homeland of the Métis Nation, and only a few blocks from the banks of the Assiniboine and the Red River where they meet, which is a historical or is a traditional place of meeting and gathering for Indigenous people since time immemorial. It's right at the heart of Turtle Island. So in my head, we are virtually gathering at this meeting place. And I just want to take a moment to thank each of you for spending the time to join this sharing session. I believe in a perfect world, we would all be sitting together in a circle and looking at each other's faces, but the magic of technology has allowed us to at least be able to gather across long distances and with a much lower carbon footprint than flying to meet each other. I'd like to thank Sofia Rablauskas, who you will be hearing from shortly, for joining us and sharing her thoughts. She's a Northern advisor to the Northern Manitoba Food, Culture and Community Collaborative, important elder to our work. My thanks goes out to Jennifer Sumner, who is from the University of Toronto. You will hear her speak shortly as well, who contacted us some time ago saying that her and her team were interested in digging more deeply into the work of this collaborative and sharing out our model of how we act as allies to Indigenous-led food sovereignty work. I'm not going to take up too much of the time, but I'll start just by providing a very brief overview of the collaborative. So the Northern Manitoba Food, Culture and Community Collaborative, there's a website there you can visit where we keep up as much information as possible that is useful to both community members and funders and governments. This group started about 5 years ago, and it started at the request of people in northern communities who were interested in allies and partners and working with those partners in a very relational kind of way, and having the partner organizations themselves communicate and work together. Northern Manitoba is a region of Canada that is underserved by philanthropic organizations. So I would say underserved by funders who are not provincial or federal funders. It's a remote, large place, and there are some challenges to working there, but the communities have a great deal of vision for what they want to do in their communities, and we have tried to bring more resources to those communities so that they can enact their vision. The collaborative itself, who is it? It's 6 Northern advisors, so elders who are from Northern Manitoba who have guided this group in learning how to be good partners and how to set up a system that works for Northern people. It is more than a dozen contributing organizations, so organizations that contribute money and time and intention to learn and unlearn together about how to be good partners with Indigenous communities. And there are 2 staff people currently, myself and Amanda Fraze, who try and support the work. And this collaborative is hosted by an organization called Tides Canada Foundation. So that's the quick who of who we are. Just to give you a sense of how the collaborative is different, this yellow graphic that's on the screen, if you can see it, was done by another academic study that studied the collaborative a few years back and was trying to explain how it worked and how it's different than a traditional funding model. So on the left side of that slide, you see the funder with their priorities and their way of working, and then they deliver that resources through the way they work to communities to do the work. The way that the Northern Manitoba Food Culture and Community Collaborative strives to work is to put the community-led activities and needs at the very center of our organization and how we work. And then you see the blue circle, which represents the Northern Advisors or elders who guide us, and then the red dots being organizations that contribute resources to the work. So the organizations themselves set aside their plans, baggage, or ways of working, and really focus on what are the community needs and how can we respond to those needs. The main actions that the collaborative undertakes include granting, so we try and deliver financial resources to communities to move their work forward. What we call north to north gatherings, so supporting communities to gather in the north in their own territory to share knowledge and share inspiration and share ideas about food sovereignty work. And the other action that I'll comment on is just an investment in deep funder learning or unlearning. Many of the organizations that are part of this collaborative are located far away from Northern Manitoba, Toronto, Ottawa, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, and we regularly invest time and energy in gathering in Northern Manitoba to listen to communities, try to learn about what it is they're trying to do, try and really hear and understand the context and reality they're working in, and then be good supporters to that work. And so the way that I visualize the collaborative isn't a yellow slide, but it's this photo here, which is a big group of people. This photo was taken 2 years ago in Opaskwayak Cree Nation, and OCN was hosting our gathering that year. And in that photo, there are funders, there are community members, there are Northern advisors, and all sort of together, working together, sharing knowledge and trying to contribute in any way we can to the Indigenous food sovereignty movement. And I guess just the last thing that I'll share before I stop is that recently we were in Peguis First Nation for a wonderful gathering that Peguis invited us to be part of and host. And we gathered at their community food production site at the gardens, and they have a beautiful arbor there, which is like a shade shelter with seating in it. And there were lots of people from Peguis, and the Chief Glenn Hudson and the Peguis Council also joined us that day. And Elder Carl McCorrister, who is another one of our wonderful Northern advisors who has gently guided and helped and taught us so much. They opened this gathering and spoke very clearly about how since time immemorial, Indigenous people have known how to care for each other and how to support each other and the animals and the lands and the waters that sustain us. And that this knowledge has been there, this way of being has been there forever. And it's our job, for those of us who are from the settler community, to be good allies to the Indigenous food sovereignty movement, to listen, to learn, and then to do what we can to help resource those communities to bring back the strength and the knowledge and the food systems that were there previous to colonization and all the impacts of our colonial system. So that's a brief overview of what the collaborative is, and just one small lesson learned over time. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Sophia Rablowskis. Sophia is joining us from Poplar River First Nation. So we are a plane ride apart, even though we're in the same province. Poplar River is a remote fly-in community in Manitoba on the east shore of Lake Winnipeg. And what I have, if we were in person, I would pass this to Sophia before asking her to share. So I will symbolically do it now. But what I have here is a tobacco tie. It is filled with beautiful tobacco that was grown in Peguis First Nation. They are growing their own traditional tobacco free of chemicals and additives. And this tobacco tie represents my gratitude to what Sophia is going to share with us, as well as gratitude, thankfulness, and just recognition that she's helping me learn through this process and will be helping all of us learn. So with that, Sophia, I welcome you and thank you very much for joining us.
Miigwech, Julie. Hello, everybody. Unfortunately, I can't join you on the actual webinar, but I greet you. So yes, thank you for that introduction. Like Julie says, I am from Poplar River First Nations, and I was born here and raised here. And I've been working as a Northern advisor for quite a while now. I'm not sure when exactly, but it has been a very good learning experience for me. But also at times, very proud, of the communities and the work they are doing. I've witnessed and experienced such great community hospitality from people and communities that I visited with the team, and we shared a lot, and we come from many different backgrounds, and we just enjoy that week together to learn and some of the challenges that communities have in terms of food security. I do a lot of sharing with what's happening in my community because I've been part of, trying to bring, things like gardening back and traditional foods. Traditional foods has been that's how we had lived off the land is very healthy traditional foods when I was growing up. But over time, people didn't do as much hunting and trapping because things changed because of colonization. A lot of our things and our ways of life got devalued, and even traditional foods were not seen as part of this I guess progression when we started to have more access to Western food. And that in the long run created some problems for our communities and our people, and we started to see diseases come to our people, and losing that connection to that land because people were no longer going out to the land and like trapping and hunting and fishing, even though we still have those practices. Like people still practice living off the land, but not with our youth. It's not as important as it was for many of us when we were growing up. But now we're trying to bring a lot of that back and put continue to put the value on the traditional foods and the medicines that our people relied on, trying to bring back. And the way we do it is by reintroducing them basically to our youth and the importance of those medicinal plants and traditional foods, and even gardening. And gardening was, I hear stories that they used to garden a lot, and people very enjoyed the work, and it was a big part of their work in the summertime, maintaining the garden. And that was lost throughout the years. Like growing up, when my mom, would go out and started her little garden of potatoes and other small stuff, but slowly, like when I became a parent, I didn't really do much of that. I did whatever any parent in my generation. The food became more convenient and store-bought, and not really understanding even what was in our food and where it came from. So, but over time, I began to relearn the importance of land food and the importance of how important it is to our health. So when I was approached to to take part in this initiative, I said, well, yeah, I didn't hesitate. This is something that I would like to do, and I really do believe in partnerships. Working with people to make communities heal from things that have happened, and to get them be more sufficient like they used to. So I really believed in that project, and that's why I continued to offer advice and offer some experience that I have, and try to, at the same time, I see that as part of healing our communities and our people, and that's why it's so important to me. And when I go out and people, when I see people working in partnerships in such like diverse backgrounds, it's really hopeful that our communities will start getting that support in going back, and also I think people are starting to find again the value of traditional foods and gardening, and I see that in my own community. We've for years we've talked about having a community greenhouse, and because sometimes we have problems in accessing funds to do startup projects, and when the opportunity came, we took it and made this greenhouse plan something that was accomplished. So it's up and running, but it's only been I think 3 years, and every year it's going to improve. Hopefully it will continue to expand to provide the produce or to the people of the community. I mean, there's a lot of factors that play into food security. Because of our isolation, we depend on one store to provide all our goods and services, to our community. But a lot of times we don't know, by the time our produce gets here, it's majority of the time it's outdated, and it's not. It doesn't appear very edible. It's really hard to trust something that doesn't really look even safe. So there's concern. So when we see our greenhouse being put up and working, and seeing things grow, and community taking part in harvesting, and even to know that there were people that had the skills of knowing the kind of seeds we want, or and the soil, the importance of soil. Before that, we didn't know that these people had these skills. We just always thought, because of the mentality of our communities, we got to wait and see who's going to come and do it, or who was going to start first, But it was so, it was, when you see that, when they had the grand opening of the greenhouse, it was a day of celebration, and the school participated. So the kids got to see just the beginning of something that's going to become self-sufficient to the community. So that's one example of something that I'm hoping that will continue for the future of our children, that they will be a big part of that, and they will learn the skills that's needed. And also, we don't always look at for profit. This is just to share with our community. This is for the community. The ownership is on the community, and I think that's a very important part of this whole thing of providing for yourself and your community, and taking upon yourself to to say, this is what we need, this is what our community needs, and maybe somewhere down the road, you know, it will as a community will do it for profit. So I think it's important to, you know, to recognize and acknowledge the work that's being done by people that some of these people in the community have never met, and I think and when they hear stories like these the booklets that they share, like people read them and they're passed around, and it's not just our community that's doing this, but further north there's communities that are benefiting from initiatives like this. So I think it's important. It was important for me, and that's why I am glad to be part of this. Our community, about our community, is a community that's been newly designated as a World Heritage Site, and that was the purpose. Is, you know, we have made a commitment to protect the land, and when we talk about the land, this includes everything on it. You know, we really do believe that our waters and our plants and the ecosystem of this area needs to be protected and need to be healthy for future generations to come. So when we say that, you know, because we are starting to get back to land food and medicinal plants and, you know, fish, we need our lands to be healthy. We need that land base to become self-sufficient and self-reliant, and hopefully in the future that it will be fully sufficient and self-reliant from the foods that are not healthy for us. And that's every chance I get, I try to tell the young people, the youth, about the importance of that, and to reconnect to these beliefs of our people. And that's why our people and our community worked hard to make this happen. You know, first we had our traditional territory protected so we could have this land base to live and have it as healthy as possible for the future generations. So I think it's so, you know, we have our pros and cons about living in an isolated community, but the to fly in food, you know, the food supplies is very expensive because they have to fly it in, and therefore we pay a lot for the food that's being flied in, and fuel. Everything is more costly than it is in the south. So those are things that need to change, and I'm hoping, you know, it's not, I understand it's not going to happen overnight, or you know, it's going to take a while, but hopefully it will happen. And I can say, like 20 years ago, we were very, we have become dependent on things, you know, like the stores that are here, and not always necessarily providing what's good for us, but whatever they can, whatever they sell the most. Our young families have gotten used to food that's more convenient, and it's not quite healthy. It's not very healthy for them, and they sometimes compromise their health because the only food they could afford is cheap, you know, that are not, the foods that are not necessarily good for them. And that's been an ongoing issue for many of our isolated communities, the cost of food that's being flown in. has caused a lot of problems in our communities with our young people getting addicted to foods that are not getting good for them. So maybe I will stop there for now and let somebody else talk for a bit.
Chimiigwech, Sophia, thank you very much for
Well, I
that.
feel like I'm sitting here. I feel like I'm talking to myself and not.
Alone in your house in Poplar River, and there's like 50 people listening to you right now. Thank you very much for what you were sharing. I held up the community stories booklet that Sophia had referenced. This is another thing that we try and do, have done at the request of communities, is to support just sharing out all the good stories. These are available on the website, and we also have hard copies if anyone would like hard copies of them. And Sophia, we have inserted a few pictures into the slides that Jennifer is going to show. Actually, Jennifer, if you could advance one slide, that would be good. There you have Sophia. When in the slides that Jennifer shows, we've inserted a few pictures of the greenhouse at Poplar River and Kelly leading that work and some of the youth over there. So, and Amanda has added the notes. So as we go through Jennifer's pictures, we'll be able to see some of the places that you spoke about. So thank you very much for sharing.
Okay.
With that, I'll turn it over to Jennifer Sumner, who's joining us from Toronto, and we are excited that you can share a little bit about this work that you were asked to do by the United Nations, and that you got to take to Geneva and share out. So thank you for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thanks very much, Julie, and thank you, Sophia, for that sort of firsthand experience, because it matches so well what we found with our research. And I'm going to talk about the sort of building sustainable local food solutions and how some Canadian Indigenous communities are using what's called the social and solidarity economy to implement zero hunger. And the team is made up of 3 people, myself and Daria Tarhan, who's a PhD student, and we're both from the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education at University of Toronto. And the 3rd member of the team is JJ McMurtry, and he teaches at York University, and he's also my son. And so it's been very fun to be doing research with him. And the background to our research is that we're settler researchers, and we have studied the social and solidarity economy in Canada in quite a few settler communities, but we really had no idea what was happening in Indigenous communities in terms of the social and solidarity economy. So we were very curious about that, and we wanted to understand how they were using it, in initiatives like community gardens and co-ops, and that all aim to address issues of hunger. And while we were in the middle of our research, looking and doing a scan of what was happening in Indigenous communities, the UN Task Force on the Social and Solidarity Economy put out a call for papers, and they wanted to know how that social and solidarity economy could help to implement their sustainable development goals. And we said to ourselves, well, we know some communities who are doing a very good job of this through our research, these Indigenous communities. So we put in an abstract, and it's like a short paragraph to explain what we're doing. And then they asked us to put in a paper, and then they asked us to come to Geneva. So I went to Geneva in June and presented our research. And I just wanted to do a little bit of background. In terms of the social and solidarity economy is an academic term, but it really means sort of economic activity that has more than just economic objectives. It has social and often environmental objectives as well. And it can include producers and workers and consumers and citizens, but they're all acting collectively in solidarity. They're not acting sort of privately for themselves. And some examples of the social and solidarity community would be cooperatives, nonprofits, and fair trade networks, those sorts of things, social enterprises. And it certainly offers, and delivers an enormous range of goods and services. But what's interesting is it delivers them to those who can afford them, but also to those who cannot afford them, which is very different from the standard economy. And so, you know, it has the ability to do it, but can it really deliver on that? We wanted to know, and we wanted to look at it in terms of food. Now, food is very central to the social and solidarity economy, to that economy that looks at social and environmental objectives as well. And there's examples that people would recognize, things like food co-ops and food recovery programs, urban agriculture, those sorts of things, community-supported agriculture, marketing boards, community kitchens. Those are all sort of some of the examples of the social and solidarity economy and how they operate in terms of food. And with these initiatives, what's really interesting is that food is less of a commodity and more like a basic human right. They're really taking away some of the commodified aspects of food. So it's not just some object for sale. And it does have the potential to contribute to zero hunger. And zero hunger is one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. They put together 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and the second one is zero hunger. And it focuses on sort of the ideas of not only ending hunger, but also achieving food security and improved nutrition and promoting sustainable agriculture. And so the question that we were looking at, can the social and solidarity economy help to implement zero hunger? And so we wanted to look at these initiatives that were happening in Indigenous communities across Canada that we were looking at with our research. And really, can they deliver and help to implement zero hunger? So there's an academic whose name is Wanda Watani, and she teaches at the University of Manitoba. And she says there's really two reasons why the social and solidarity economies become an effective tool for Indigenous community development. And the first reason is because it allows for a range of forms. It doesn't force anybody into a particular form, but it allows a range of forms. And it also maintains control in the hands of communities. And the control isn't outside there in larger centers or in international markets, but it's within communities. And we've really felt as researchers that the Indigenous social and solidarity initiatives that we were finding really have a lot to teach non-Indigenous people. And that's especially because of the quadruple bottom line that these initiatives have. I explained earlier that the social and solidarity economy has sort of economic and social and environmental objectives, but the quadruple bottom line adds cultural objectives, and that's in terms of the Indigenous community projects, and we certainly think that that's very important in the success of these initiatives that we found. Now, we assembled a database. We had the graduate student, the PhD student look at just general basic public knowledge that was available on the internet or on publications like the one that Julie showed you. And we found with our first sweep through, just looking to see what was happening out there across the country, we found 166 initiatives. And you can see this here on the map. There's also a website that's underneath, and for anybody in the future who wants to look at it, all of those are interactive buttons, and they will give the basic information that was available on websites and stuff about these initiatives. And we found all kinds of community gardens, cooperatives, school gardens, food markets, all sorts of things that were happening across the country. And we also found some interesting clusters, and one of the interesting clusters happens to be in Northern Manitoba because of the work of the Northern Manitoba Food Culture Community Collaborative. So we thought, well, we should do a case study of this group because they are doing just wonderful work. And you heard from Julie about them. It's a nonprofit organization that works under the auspices of Tides Canada. And it has, financial and technical support for Indigenous-led initiatives, in Northern Manitoba. And the interesting thing is made up of Northern community people, Northern advisors, funding funding groups and organizations. And really the overall goal is to focus on, sort of food security and economic development. and it operates within a larger context of food security in Northern Manitoba. So when we looked at it, we looked especially at the report that Julie showed to you, and we found all these wonderful projects that were happening, 20 food-related projects, school gardens, community gardens, that kind of thing, beekeeping projects. And so we looked at it and we thought, you know, how are these projects addressing zero hunger? And I really think that when we looked at the aims of the projects, they really were clearly looking at alleviating hunger problems and aiming for zero hunger, you know, in terms of increasing food security. Another aim was improving food access, improving vegetable and fruit yields in the community, and establishing knowledge and about healthy living, making the garden sustainable and sharing food together, promoting healthy eating habits among people, supporting community members starting their own gardens and greenhouses, and also increasing access to affordable and locally grown organic food options. So really, you can see the aim of these projects is not to sort of make money privately for somebody. The aim is to really to alleviate hunger in communities. And we thought that the Peguis Community Garden Project really, you know, under the leadership of Elder Carl McCorster, encapsulated the spirit of the social and solidarity economy and the second Sustainable Development Goal. He said that the aim of the project was to regain our heritage and culture of community agriculture by engaging community members to grow their own healthy foods, in the hope that their children will continue this cultural activity and provide security for all. There's certainly been some problems with the projects. They're not problem-free. And the United Nations asked all the contributors to name some of the problems so groups could learn from each other and people could read about others' problems and sort of learn from them. And there were some problems with water, staff volunteers, soil and land, technology, weather, climate, animal problems. But in many ways, the problems are not seen as failures, you know, with the projects. That's the important thing to think about. They are really challenges for the community to work through in order to become collectively stronger and also to learn through a solutions approach. The interesting thing about these projects as well that we noticed is that they also help to address some of the other sustainable development goals because of the activities they're doing. Good health and well-being, which goal number 3, goal number 4, quality education, and goal number 8, decent work and economic growth. And we really felt that the Northern Manitoba Food Culture and Community Collaborative Initiatives have something important to teach us about the role of the social and solidarity economy in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. And so I want to sort of step back for a minute and say, if you think about the social and solidarity economy as an idea, it's fundamentally not about the state and it's not about the market. And the quote here says that it involves economic activity, neither controlled directly by the state or by the profit logic of the market, activity that prioritizes social well-being and marginalized individuals over partisan political directives or individual gain. That's a quotation from the work of my son, JJ. And really, you can see by this kind of academic kind of concept that community and well-being become the focus. It's not the market, it's not the state. Community is the focus of the social and solidarity economy. But what is so interesting is this academic concept simply mirrors what's actually really going on in the communities. That it's the reality of many of these projects that were initiated across Canada. In these projects, and you heard it from Sophia, community comes first, and residents decide on their form of engagement. And again, to quote Wanda Watani, she says, when confronted with problems, Indigenous people must find solutions that are not disconnected from their own ideas about society and social order and economies. And it seems that the social and solidarity economy provides some solutions that are not disconnected. And so it's emerged as an effective tool of community development because it allows, as she said, for a variety of forms, and it maintains control within the community. So I want to sort of sum up by saying, when asking whether the social and solidarity economy can help to implement the sustainable development goals, we can learn from these initiatives. There's a lot to teach us from these initiatives, because what we really need is a robust collaborative form of the social and solidarity economy to address the complexity and the problems that are talked about in the sustainable development goals. It needs to be based in community, and so much of the social and solidarity economy is now being forced closer and closer to the market and private profit and that sort of thing. And these examples show where it belongs, right in the community. And to achieve zero hunger, the social and solidarity economy has to prioritize community needs, community ownership, and community control. In terms of policy implications, thinking about this, it's certainly important to implement, in the broadest context, the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And it's important for Canada to create a national food strategy to address questions of hunger. But more specifically, it's really important to settle land claims to guarantee access to country foods. It's also very important to recognize and respect Indigenous approaches to food, that they're different than the market approaches that many settler communities take for granted. And it's important to implement social and solidarity economy policies at all levels of government. And keeping in mind that the Indigenous social and solidarity economies are qualitatively different than other ones. It's very important to nurture umbrella organizations like the Northern Manitoba Food Culture and Community Collaborative, and also to support Indigenous control over their own resources. And these are the policy implications that came out for us because of these initiatives that were happening in Northern Manitoba and also across Canada. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, for sharing. I just still get excited to think that you went and shared that to international audience in Geneva. We have some time and would love to open it up to people to ask questions or make comments. If you want to speak to Sophia or Jennifer about the work, that would be great. And I think Sheena is monitoring any questions that come in through the chat.
Right, so everyone, just as a quick reminder, if you do have a question, you are online and you would like to type that in, there are two options for you to do that. One is the Q&A button in the black toolbar at the bottom of your screen. You might just need to hover your mouse at the lower portion of your screen to have that pop up. You can type a question in there and we can go through them chronologically. The second option, if you can't find that one, is there should be a chat button there for you. And if you would prefer to speak using your own voice, there's an option to virtually raise your hand and we can unmute you manually and have you speak from there. For those of you who are joining us on the phone, I do think we have a handful of dial-in callers. What we may be able to do is to kind of bulk unmute the four of you at some point to make sure that we can offer you the opportunity to speak should you like to do that.
Okay. So Sheena, we would like to start with a bulk unmuting of the phone lines because Elder Carl McCorster, who I referenced, and you saw a picture of him there with his bone tool and pictures from the Peguis agricultural initiative that Jennifer had talked about. He's on the line and would like to share something. So
super.
I think we'll start with him.
Thank you.
Carl, can you hear us still?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hey, yes, we can hear you. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I'm here in Peguis and listening very intently here. And yeah, it's a good discussion. One of the questions or comments I wanted to make to I guess it's Dr. Sumner that just spoke,
Mhm.
and her Geneva visit. Like I've always, and I know Julie's heard me out on this. I've always talked about our treaty rights and being part of Treaty 1, my community of Peguis. The treaty stated that there would be assistance for farming and agriculture, and now we haven't had anything like that in terms of assistance via our Treaty 1 for our community for probably over 30 years now. So I'm just wondering, Dr. Sumner, if you've addressed that or have thought about that in your research in terms of looking at success and failure in Indigenous communities.
And the answer is no, I haven't looked at that because I didn't realize it was part of the treaties, the existence in agriculture. And I also know that the treaties have been not honored in any way. And so it's sad that this assistance has not been coming through, because it's so important that this assistance be given in terms of questions of food security. So that is something that I would like to learn about and to try to forward, in any way that I can, because I think it's vital, a vital aspect of thinking about how to keep these initiatives being successful.
Yeah, I see that as something that is, I think, important to where we're at right now in terms of our history. We are just coming out of colonialism, I guess, not completely, but we're reaching out now as First Nations, being a nation, and wanting to, I guess, get involved in food security for our communities. We've lost that. There's a lot of things that have been lost through that whole process of colonialism and separation of our people through residential school and so on. And so there's a lot of restructuring, a lot of things that has to happen. And I really appreciate people, academics, that take up our cause, because this research has to be done. It has to be researched and proper, I guess, being historically correct and so on. I think that's very important. I just wanted to say a little bit about our own program here. I'm also working, besides just community gardening with our community, collaborating with the University of Manitoba. We have a potato seed program, and we're trying to develop our own seed, and just struggle, but we're getting there and learning a lot. Also, we started a 3 to 4 acre lot for a perennial wheat, also with the University of Manitoba, and it's quite interesting. We had a tough summer, actually, dry and cold at night, and so it was very slow in our crop. But by the end of the summer, it's really come along, and I've had a visit by Dr. Doug Katina. He's from the university. He visited me for a day, and so he was quite happy about where we're at in our seed with this wheat. So hopefully next year we're going to get a crop. But again, I guess we're looking for bigger things. I think that being able to use our land in that way, I think it's something that we can share with our other communities. We, I for sure want to work collaboratively with our communities in the north and share. I think that's important. And it's all about community building. Like I said, we've lost a lot. I know, through visits with other communities and seeing where we're at, we have to come together. There's so many things socially that we have to overcome, and just continue to rebuild. So things can go either way. We've had some success, but we've also had failures. So again, it's just a matter of just continuing on and working together. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Carl, I'd like to also add that I didn't know that the agricultural assistance was part of Treaty 1, but I have spoken to someone at the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture and Food about such projects, because Julie had been talking to me about agricultural assistance. And it's so sad because the ministries of agriculture can only seem to recognize individual profit-driven projects. They can't understand collective community projects. So they're not even structured to offer the kind of help that would be, you know, more of a collaborative, cooperative effort. And that needs to change within the ministries. It's just, it's very backwards.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
Thank you, Carl, for what you shared, and thank you for being such a leader and inspiring so many other communities. You've hosted tons of communities to come and see what you're doing, and it's just a really important part, I think, of this Indigenous food sovereignty movement here in Manitoba. So miigwech. I'll turn back to Sheena because there's a number of questions waiting.
There are, so I'm just going to start with the order that they've come in. The first is from Mary. Mary is the Grants Administrator here at Tides Canada. Mary says, the social and solidarity economy is the future. So exciting, and congratulations to Julie and the collaborative for pioneering this here in Canada. Question is, Julie, can you please explain how the grant reporting method for the grants that the collaborative requests from the grantees is unique and goes along with the collaborative model of grant making?
Okay. Yeah, happy to. When I'll just do a very quick share because I know there's more questions waiting, but so the Northern Manitoba Food Culture and Community Collaborative, it is has more than a dozen member organizations which provide funding, and those funders also learn about what's happening in community and build relationships and trying to work in a different kind of way. Part of trying to work in a different kind of way meant it was really important that we didn't develop a like standardized reporting form with firm metrics in it that each community had to report on. Instead, we take a learning approach to quote unquote reporting, and ask that each year the communities that we've partnered with provide like a sharing back on what they think is important for us as collaborative members and Northern advisors, what's important for us to learn about their work. And that can come in a really wide range of formats. So we do ask that they share photos that they are comfortable and happy to share, and we always promise to let people know when those pictures would be used for things, and to share back copies of those pictures, and try and print copies and bring them back to the communities. But in terms of learning about the actual projects, we ask that communities do that in their own way. So we have received PowerPoint presentations, stories, some videos, some written reports, stories from community members, in all kinds of different ways where communities are just deciding for themselves how they want to share back to our group as an ally of theirs what they think we need to know about the work. It's also done through a conversational process at the end of the year. So we make sure we have like good conversations over the phone or in person whenever possible with communities, but we have no set reporting form. And that has been challenging for some communities because we are also entrenched in this like, oh, if we get funding, what's the report format look like? And in this case, we don't have one. And I know our partners in Opaskwayak Cree Nation have been very happy in particular about that. They're like, you're the first ones that we've ever partnered with that haven't told us exactly what we need to tell you. So it's been important to let go of that part and not enforce what communities need to tell us about in the learning aspect of it. Thank you.
Okay, with just a few minutes left, I'll move to the next question that came in, which came in through the chat box from Phil. Thank you, Phil. Has two parts here. The first says, though I recognize the focus on Indigenous communities, do you see a potential for translating this into the urban context? Jennifer, I'll leave that one to you. And then the second one, actually, I'll read as well. The quadruple bottom line. Why is there a distinction between social and cultural benefits?
Interesting. Yes, it would translate very well into urban projects because there's certainly, you know, urban cooperatives, urban community gardens, all that sort of thing. So it would translate very well into urban. into an urban context, you know, without a problem. The second one was about social and cultural. That's an interesting thing in academia, and social. Some people separate it and some people don't. But I think, especially in terms of respect for Indigenous culture, it's important to include that, because it is often the social bottom line might be things like helping disabled people or marginalized people, or helping community groups or certain families, whereas the cultural brings out that aspect of reinforcing and honoring and respecting culture and long-standing culture, and how food can play into that. And so the cultural, that's the reason for separating out the cultural aspect from the social.
And a great question from Nicole that I think everyone will be interested in as well. Jennifer, what was the UN's response to the paper?
It was interesting. People were very interested. It was an international conference, and there were people, you know, from all over the world there presenting on their projects. And it was a very, you know, interested and positive response to it. Although, because many people were not Canadians, they were not familiar with the context. So it would seem for some of them to be quite different. But it was a very positive response. But what surprised me more than anything was the rather huge lack of Indigenous projects that were represented at this worldwide conference. There were lots of cities there and representing projects, you know, that countrywide and this kind of thing, but there were very few Indigenous projects at this UN conference that were being reported on. But certainly for mine, there was curiosity and interest and sort of an appreciation of what was happening.
Excellent, thank you. We do still have some questions sitting in the queue, but I appreciate that we've gone 1 minute over time now. Perhaps what we can figure out if we can do is Julie, Jennifer, Sophia, and I can figure out if there's a way that we can perhaps respond to those questions in writing, and I'm happy to share out the responses to some of those questions along with a recording of the webinar to everyone that RSVP today, and we can try and get you a little bit more information that way. Thank you everyone for taking time out of your afternoon to join us. It's lovely to have such a wonderful turnout, to hear Jennifer speak, to hear Sophia speak, and to hear Julie contextualize the collaborative for us. We really appreciate that, and we really appreciate the three of you as well for taking time from your afternoon to share with us. It's wonderful to have you all here, and thank you so very much.
We can definitely write some responses to those questions, and I just want to say again that I really appreciate the time that everyone's taken to be here and to listen in. It's a very important topic for so many reasons, and also thank you very much to Sophia Roblowskis for joining us from Poplar River, and for Jennifer joining us from Toronto, and thank you to Carl for also being here and sharing about your community as well.
And thank you for the opportunity.
All right.